This is a CNBC special report. Is your money safe?
Where is the leadership? Answer, it's nowhere. We have none right now. We have no political leadership. We have no business leadership. We have no financial leadership. Bill George, the former chairman and CEO of Medtronic, sits on the board of ExxonMobil and Goldman Sachs and the author of True North. And I want to know where the CEOs are now. Bill George, why aren't CEOs stepping up and saying, I'm going to start buying back my stock? That's what happened after 9/11.
Well, I wouldn't advise buying back your stock. I'd keep your powder dry because I think CEOs today in the corporate world are focused on long-term investments. They haven't moved away from that. Look at a guy like Sam Palmisano at IBM. Straight down the line, continue to invest for the long term at IBM. You see what Indranui is doing at PepsiCo. Same thing. But I think at the heart, this is a crisis of leadership. This is not a crisis of credit default swaps and subprime mortgages. This is a crisis of failed leadership. And the guy who's been speaking out very articulately forever, and no one listens to him, is Warren Buffett. If Wall Street had listened to what Buffett said, we wouldn't have this crisis. Now, I admire Paulson for stepping into the breach, and I agree with very much with Jeff. I think guys like Jamie Dimon and Dick Kovacevic are straight on the money. That's why Kovacevic can afford now to take over Wachovia, because he has been very clear. He didn't get down in the mud with Angelo Mozilo and everyone else on a lot of these subprime mortgages. He stayed and kept his mortgage standards up there. That's why he's in good shape now.
I really agree with Bill George on that point, and he's been very forthright on speaking on these issues. I think Warren Buffett has been out there and has come on our air and has been elsewhere as well, and he's been a strong voice here. I think as well as being a sort of a crisis of leadership, I think it's been a crisis, Bill, and I'd be interested to get your thoughts on whether it has been a crisis and an utter failure of corporate governance, that boards have failed to exercise their fiduciary duties on behalf of shareholders whom they allegedly represent.
You're 100% correct. I'm glad you raised that. No one's saying, where are the boards? The boards have the ultimate fiduciary responsibility. Where are they? Where's the board of Lehman Brothers and AIG?
Pearson, Washington is certainly trying to lead. Up for debate is whether they're leading us in the right direction and whether we want to follow them. Back with us, Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, Yale professor and CNBC contributor. Bill George, former chairman and CEO of Medtronic, author of True North, and with the global perspective, Vicky Ward, Vanity Fair writer and CNBC contributor. Bill, I understand you want to take the baton to the next lap.
Well, I think the boards are totally culpable here. Their job is to look at risk. I sit on the board of a very large investment bank. There's never a meeting that goes by where we don't spend at least 2 hours talking about firm-wide risk. One of my colleagues went on the board of a very large commercial bank, and he asked about it, and he said, we don't discuss this. Nonsense. This is the board's job to ensure that the firm is survivable and is viable for the long term and is not taking too much risk. I don't care how much money they're making.
Let me ask you a question.
You have to balance that.
If you were on the board of AIG, you were on the board of Lehman Brothers, you were on the Bear Stearns, you were on the board of any of these firms that were in effect benefiting from the capacity that they had figured out how to innovate risk off of their balance sheet and onto apparently the American taxpayers' balance sheet ultimately, while accumulating hundreds of millions of dollars in bonus money, what recourse do the American people have at this point to at least identify those that were so audacious as to take this risk and be willing to accept that bonus and still sit there tonight on a boat somewhere in the Mediterranean?
Well, I think there ought to be holding them to their fiduciary responsibility. If that means giving back fees and all that, they ought to be held to account because they didn't do their jobs. And we're going to pay a huge price for loading this off on the American people. You think we're going to get out of this? You think we're going to get out of this with just some taxpayer money? We're going to be heavily regulated, and we've really lost sight of what we're all about. And just the chickens coming home to roost now.
I hope they enjoy their bonus. We've got to take
control over. But I think the boards of the remaining firms have to take control of this situation and get back to prudent investing and assurance of the firms are viable for the long term. And if not, you ought to resign. You ought to get off the board.